Hi, I am here today with Denise Barela. I have to say, one of my favorite people in the whole wide world. I was so thrilled to see that she wanted to do an interview here. She is a Christian author, editor, student, and just an amazing faith-filled girl. Hi, Denise. It's great to have you here.
Hi, Jennifer. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to do this with you.
So if you guys are watching YouTube, you have to watch this on YouTube. You got to get it. She has the craziest hairs, and I just love it. Today we're purple, and it's beautiful. So you'll see in her headshot, it was green. So it's always a colorful surprise when I meet Denise. So Denise, tell us some things about you.
Well, I've been reading since I was very little, and growing up, being encouraged to read is kind of what inspired me to get into writing. So I'm an avid reader. I've been writing for quite a few years now, and that's kind of where most of my fun time goes at this point.
But writing is more than a hobby for you.
Yes.
Okay.
I published one regular book and then a short story as part of a collection at this point.
So one of the books that we're highlighting today is Silencing the Siren, and it's a kind of a takeoff of The Little Mermaid, correct?
Mhm.
So and
Definitely.
it's mystery, Christian.
Christian historical mystery. So kind of threw it in the 1920s to see how that would play out.
How fun is that? Tell us a little bit about that book. What inspired you to write that?
Okay, so the funny story with this one is that my mom and Shatona, who are usually the two people who end up getting me into trouble with some of these ideas,
That's
had
Shatona
the idea.
Havoc.
Yeah,
Sandra
Shatona
Pearl,
have it.
Shatona Havoc, just for those of you who don't know.
Sandra Bell is my mom, and Shatona is my writing mentor. So they had the idea to do this series where it was fairy tales done as mysteries, but they wanted to pop them in the 1920s. So they were talking about, I'm like, oh yeah, that's a great idea. And Shatona goes, Denise, you should do The Little Mermaid. And I'm like, how did I get drawn into this? Like, yeah, it's a great idea, but like, how did I get mixed up in everything? So it took a little bit because there was a lot of research to do as to how I could fit that in. And I had just recently seen The Greatest Showman,
Oh yeah.
um, which kind of gave me the freak show idea. So I'm like, well, I'll set it there. And if I give her conjoined legs, that's my mermaid. Because that was the hardest part. I'm like, how do I come up with a mermaid in the 1920s and make it as historically accurate as I could? So it was definitely a challenge, but it was one that I ended up enjoying in the end.
Very clever. And this is part of the Ever After Mysteries. Is that the series name? Ever After
Yes,
Mysteries. So
I
how
am
many
book
books
number
is it?
7.
Your
There are
book
8
number seven.
total, but I'm book 7, so I was close
Okay.
to the end.
Okay, 8 total and she's book number 7. And I'll have the links in the show notes for people to take a look at that. I'll put Denise, I'll have your website in the show notes. I'll have the links for the book. People can buy it. I will also have the back cover blurb for the book as well, so people can get an idea. So I've known Denise for, gosh, I think we met in 2018, 17.
Probably it was either 17 or 18, I think.
At a writers conference, and we have worked together for ever since, really. So it's been a real
Yep.
pleasure. But you're a busy girl. You do more than write. I know you're working on a screenwriting classes right now. You work for Celebrate Lit Publishing as part of the publicity, but also as an editor.
Hmm.
So you're working full time. You're also working in an essay review company 20 hours a week. So where do you find how many do you sleep at all?
Maybe like 5 hours.
Oh my gosh, I don't know how you fit it all in. Of course, I've got so many years on you, but youth has its privileges, that's for sure. What does a typical day for you look like?
Usually I get up and after I've kind of, got my coffee, got some caffeine in me, I sit down and get my my publicity work done. Um, I'll schedule social media posts, and if I have anything in my editor's inbox that needs to be done, I'll try to tackle some of that. And then The essay review company is kind of all over the place. I just give them a chunk of hours I'm willing to work and they schedule me anywhere. So depending on what I'm scheduled for the day, I'll get my essay review done. And then my household chore is dishes. So that's how I get my reading done, is I pop my headphones on and while I'm washing dishes, I'm listening to a book.
Awesome. So what does the essay review job entail? What is that? Is that you doing editing or what does that mean exactly?
Yeah, so students, the school districts that choose to work with the company submit their essays to the company. And then during whatever my shift is, it's anywhere from 4 to 8 hours, I will read over the student's essay and leave comments. And the whole point of that is to ask questions. So they don't want us to just give students answers. I have to phrase it in such a way where I'm asking them a question to get them to do the work.
Oh, is
So
that hard?
it's actually a lot more fun than I expected to be. I've got some pretty crazy papers over the year and a half that I've been working with them. And it's kind of fun to see what the school districts are doing. I've been getting a lot of Fahrenheit 451 papers in the last week or so.
Funny. And is this high school? Is it?
We get kindergarten through even some colleges.
Oh, wow. So you're
It's
all over the place.
it's very rare we get anybody under third grade submitting essays. Usually kindergarten and first grade is the live help side where they actually work one-on-one with the tutor. I'm not comfortable trying that, so I stick to my essay reviews because I'm fairly good at that.
So what long range, what are your goals? If you could look 10 years down the road, what would you be wanting to do?
I think what I'm kind of looking at is right now I'm getting my screenwriting certificate because somebody that I met at Mount Herman last year told me that there's kind of a need for people in the Christian side of that industry to help them look over their stuff, give them feedback. And I'm like, well, I've always been interested in screenwriting. I've taken several workshops in different Christian conferences we've done. So it's always been fascinating. So I'm taking that so I can do that. And my goal with that is to be able to support myself enough doing that that I can create creative writing classes to
Mhm.
do as an after school program for middle school and high school students.
Wow. So you also have a teaching degree, is that correct? Or you did a master's in creative writing and
And a master's in education.
goodness sake, you are well educated.
And I'm looking at a PhD in creative writing. We'll see how
Wow.
that goes.
Wow, that's incredible. So what does something like that entail? A master's in creative writing? How do you get a master's? I mean, I know you get, it's a degree that you have to work for school, but does that teach you how to write better? Does it teach you how to edit better? What is the main goal of having a master's in creative writing?
So the particular program I did, the whole goal was learning the process of basically being an author. So it took you from the very foundations of, learning about the main genres. What I loved about this program is that it covered speculative fiction,
Mhm.
which is kind of where my heart lies, fantasy, science fiction. I have a love of horror too,
Yeah.
so it takes some of that. So you don't see that a lot. Usually it's romance,
Right.
YA, historical, contemporary. So it was kind of fun to have that more nuanced niche section.
Mhm.
So it takes you through planning a book, researching your book. You also get to pick electives like marketing. So the marketing class was actually really funny because my professor was talking about using pen names. And the example she gave is actually one of the authors that we have published a short story for and have done tours for.
Oh, how
And
funny.
she mentioned book tour. She didn't mention the company, but she mentioned book tours. And I'm like, hey, those are our book tours that she's talking about in this class.
Wow, that's
Like that
incredible.
was just kind of a fun moment.
Yeah.
But by the end of the program, you're supposed to have a book that is ready to be published. You have learned how to make things like newsletters, set up proper social media accounts. I had considered taking an SEO class, but that was getting a little too technical for me. So I was moved off a wait list into a different class that I wanted. But the whole goal is just to teach you how to do that. And then you could either choose online teaching as a certificate option, or I did professional writing. So it taught me how to be an editor and a coach, and how to work with people on their writing to make it better.
Oh, awesome. So when you say that you were supposed to have a book from start to finish ready to publish, did you have a book start to finish ready to publish? Because
I did. And what was crazy about that is I was writing that at the same time that I was writing Silencing the Siren.
oh, so did you write Silencing the Siren through that class?
I didn't. I wrote a completely different book that had been a passion project. And then as I was working on that, Silencing the Siren was kind of dumped on my lap, so to
Oh,
speak. So it was, I mean, it wasn't that difficult. I think where I got into a lot of trouble was that the book I was writing for school is first person present tense, because that was the only way I could get it to work. Whereas Silencing the Siren is third person past tense.
oh my gosh. Yeah, but you're used to
So
juggling all kinds
I
of
would
weird
miss.
things.
Yeah, I would
So,
mix them up though.
so is that book something that you would publish now?
It's something I hope to publish at some point, but I have it planned as a 3-book series.
Mhm.
And so I've never moved past the planning stage of book 2 just because I have so many other things going on.
Kind of
But
hard to
I
do a
know,
3-book series if you can't jump into book 2 as soon as book 1 is done.
so and I don't work well under tight deadlines for writing. So I'm like, I would like to finish these 3 books before I pitch them anywhere, or at least be done with 1 and 2 before I pitch them anywhere, because it would just be too stressful for me.
I don't know how you juggle everything you do. What, are you a pantser or are you a planner, plotter?
Um, I kind of fall in the middle. I used to be a pantser where I wouldn't plot out anything, but then for school I had to outline that book and turn in an outline. Which ended up being really good because I learned that the research I had done for that particular book, because it's very steeped in Viking lore, was actually wrong. The
Oh,
church had gone in at some point after my book takes place and has rewritten a lot of the like folklore and history of the area. So everything I had written was through the viewpoint of that. So
uh,
I had to go back and rewrite a bunch of it to keep it as historically accurate as I could. So I'm like, okay, I see the benefit of outlines. So I create a very general outline. So I know I want start, here's how I want to finish. Here's the couple of things I want to happen someplace in the book. And then I just let the book flow from there.
see, I used to be a total pantser, and then my first book I wrote, I actually still sitting in a binder in my closet, which probably will never see the light of day. But I wrote it when my daughter was in the hospital because I was home with her for so long. And I did it as I just plotted it and I wrote myself a new corner in the end. And I was like, okay, now what do I do? So then I thought, well, I'll start planning. But when you plan, it kind of takes away that Holy Spirit aspect of coming in and allowing things to happen you don't expect. So then now what I do is you know Randy Ingermanson.
Mhm.
He was my mentor and he suggested the book Story Engineering by Larry Brooks. And I still to this day, I will go through that one chapter that shows you where you need your pitch point, your plot point, your midpoint, and all of those things just to plot them out, what major things should happen. And then I let it go from there. And then I go ahead and just write as I write. But if you don't hit those specific places, your book can stall pretty quickly, or it can have a what
Mhm.
are they call saggy middle, or so I mean,
Yeah.
that does help. But I don't know people. I know people that totally pants the whole thing. And I don't know how they do it, how they keep things. How do you make sure that there's some form of conflict that's going to make sense and be able to be resolved in a right way if you have no idea what you're doing? I don't know.
And I think it's easier also to keep track of kind of the small things. Like when I had originally planned silencing the siren, um, I had it done a specific way. And I had actually written it up to a certain point. I was almost done with the book. And then something happened with Scrivener. I've never had it happen again. Shatona's never seen it. I lost like almost half of my book.
Oh
And
no.
I mean, I was freaking out because I was already past my deadline. And I'm like, what am I gonna do? But I had lost my outline earlier on, so I was writing based off of what I remembered. And when I had talked to Shatona about it, she reminded me of a subplot point that I had written down that I had forgotten about. So I was able to go back and rework that in because I wanted to make it both like the original, like Hans Christian Andersen's version, but also tie in some Disney because I think that's for my age range. That's the Little Mermaid we all know. It's
Right.
because I grew up on that. So I was able to add in my version of like Ursula's character. So I actually based her off of Ursula's human form in the Disney movie and gave her a very similar name. And she added a whole nother layer of conflict that just made the story even better. So I'm like,
Mm.
okay, write things down, make sure you remember where you can find it, because your story will be better with the outline that you had planned out.
I lost 12,000 words one time,
Oh
12,000
man.
words in the middle of a book. So I backed Scrivener up to Dropbox. I
I
and
had it backed up. I don't know what happened.
well, that's weird then. That's weird.
It's
Yeah.
the weirdest thing I've ever had happen, but it ended up working out for good because my story ended up better.
Well, there you go. Sometimes when you rework it, the rewrites are better than the original. But boy, you have to first get past all the stress and the freaking out about losing all that because that's a lot, especially if you have a deadline. So,
Mhm.
so your typical day, I mean, you're juggling school, you're juggling work, you're juggling actually two jobs, basically, or three jobs if you want to get technical. So, and you're a faith-filled girl. So I'm just going to ask this, are you in the Word every day?
Not as much as I would like to be. I've gotten a lot better this year than I have been in previous years. I think especially because school has like drastically slowed down. The screenwriting program is a lot easier than the master's program that I finished. So I'm able to take more time in the evening, and I have learned the value of listening to sections of the Bible.
Mhm.
I've never actually finished a Bible plan. I start, and then usually it's around like Numbers and Leviticus that I end up kind of tapering off because I'm
That's
just like,
pretty fast.
I can't. Sometimes I'll skip over them because like my brain sometimes just can't handle trying to keep track of all the measurements and
Okay.
um
I think Leviticus is the hardest book in the Bible.
but I've been a lot better about it this year. And since changing to the new church a couple years ago, there's a lady at my church whose name is also Jennifer, funnily enough. Um, and her and I have kind of fallen into a discipleship thing. So her and I are doing Bible studies together. And I've kind of taken what we've done there. We have actual books that we use for that, but I've taken that style and applied it to my own studies. So I'm going through Ephesians right now because it's basically the gospel in a nutshell.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's a kind of a good place to be working on so I can share the gospel with others.
Yeah, Ephesians is a good book. So, so you do in the Word like you are, and just trying to stay with whatever God's will is for your life. Do you ever feel a little bit lost? Like I'm not sure what I'm doing, or do you wake up feeling a little bit like a little? I mean, I could just imagine. I can't even imagine actually.
I definitely felt that going through the education degree. That wasn't something I originally had on my radar. I only did it because I was told that it would be a good oomph in working with schools to do
Yeah.
like an after school program. But the program was awful. My
Oh,
parents went through it when I was younger. And so when I talked to them about it and I was telling them this is what they're doing, they're like, this is not the same program. I was actually pursuing a credential, but I just ended up switching to only the master's because I'm like, I am not prepared to go into a classroom. it did not prepare me for that. And because I did it over COVID, there was no student teaching before the student teaching part, before the internship. We did all virtual classrooms, and the simulations were awful. Like I'd be working with kindergartners, and I would tell them, tell me something that fun you did over the weekend. And so I don't know what program was running the fake students, but I had all these students raising their hands going, I don't know what we're supposed to be doing. And I'm like, even kindergartners would understand what I'm asking of them. It's like I don't feel it was like a genuine classroom
Wow.
experience. So I felt a little lost, and being in the classroom isn't a passion of mine.
Right.
I don't like playing those kinds of politics that I watched my parents have to play.
Well,
So I
it's
did feel really
changed.
lost.
It has changed. And I have to say, as a former teacher, I don't think you can ever be prepared for being in the classroom until you're actually in the classroom. I just don't. And when I was in my degree, we're doing my teaching credential, and I started substitute teaching in the middle of all that, and I hated it. And I went to my professor and I said, hey, I'm almost done with my schooling. I've put all this money out. I hate substitute teaching. What if I'm a horrible teacher? And he said, do not judge the efficacy of substitute teaching with actual teaching. He said, it's basically like saying you don't like babysitting, so you're never going to have kids. When they're your kids, it's a completely different, and he was right. I loved teaching, but teaching has changed over the last 10, 15 years. It's not what it used to be, and it's very sad.
Yeah, I think the concern I had was that I spent more of my program learning how to teach kids about their feelings than I did actual subject matter. I'm like, how am I supposed to teach them English, math, science? Like I had to try to create my own lesson plans, but they didn't really tell me how to do that. I spent more time on Google and going to my parents, since they're both teachers, to figure that out. I'm like, I'm so lost.
Well,
I don't know what I'm doing. I can tell them how to relate it to their feelings, but that's about it.
That's bizarre.
It was very bizarre.
Oh, wow. Well, see, that's why I don't teach anymore. There you go. And I think it could be different depending on which state you're in.
Yeah, California is pretty liberal with that. So
Yeah, we don't here in Tennessee, we don't really care a lot about your feelings. We just want you to get the work done,
which is important. That's an important life lesson.
It is an important life lesson. It's important to learn to do the work, and I don't know. It's just bizarre. Life is bizarre.
It is.
So, do you have, I know you have these books that you'd like to write as three of them, but I mean, you're a writer in your heart. You're a writer. Do you journal? Do you do anything to keep up with the writing, even though you're now in school?
I do journal, and what's nice about the school program is that it's basically like the master's I did for creative writing, where you will have a completed screenplay by the end. So this whole class was about delving into what you're going to be writing about, and the assignment I actually turned in on Tuesday was a 5-page outline of my 3-act script with all about my main characters and my log line. So because some of the electives that I was hoping to do aren't currently available, one of which was how to turn a book into a movie, right. I have been taking Silencing the Siren and turning that into a screenplay.
Gotcha.
So that's actually been kind of fun because it's, a different aspect of writing. There's a lot less frills, for lack of a better word. Like
it's not the same descriptors, because it's completely different. You're not describing a setting. You have to shoot the setting. You have to show the setting. It's completely. I don't think I would like that. It takes all the.
I think I like that. I think a little bit more just because I love writing dialogue, or even just I like delving into what my character's thinking. So, I mean, that's a little
show what they're thinking. How do you show what they're thinking when you don't have their internal monologue going on?
Yeah, that part's a little bit harder, but I think learning to translate that into some dialogue is a challenge that kind of sounds fun to me.
Well, see, I prefer dialogue too. Dialogue's my favorite part of writing.
I like watching characters interact and writing those interactions. So I think it will be kind of a fun challenge to figure out how to go from book to script.
Awesome. Even when I write, I see it happening like in a movie and try to write it as I see it. So I guess it's basically the same idea, only you get to add that little internal dialogue.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, what else do you want to talk about, Denise? Anything else on your mind and your heart right now?
I do have an upcoming series that I am working on.
Huh?
Um, that I don't really, I think it was playing the game on my phone that inspired it. I'm actually working on a Clue mystery series
Ooh.
that Shatona Havoc is helping me plot out, where a reader is following a serial killer who's basically supposed to be like Bodden or Mr. Black in the game of Clue. And it's going to be small books, and each book is going to tackle a different Clue character. And I've tried to give them names as close to the Clue characters as I can.
How fun is that? So you do
So
have
you,
writing going on.
so it's been kind of a fun challenge. I've started writing the first one, and that's what's nice about having Scrivener on my phone is that whenever I'm out and about, I can just pull out my phone and
You have
write on
Scrivener
my
on your
phone.
phone?
Hmm.
Can I get Scrivener on my phone? I had no idea
Um,
that Scrivener on
I
your
know
phone.
it works with Apple products. I don't know if they've expanded into other ones yet. So it depends on what kind of phone you have.
I'm Apple all the way.
Yeah, my phone's got it, my iPad's
Oh,
got it, and my Mac has it. So it backs up to Dropbox too. So whatever device I open it on is my most current version.
I'm gonna have to check. I did not know you could do that. See, I learned something. See, and Denise is my virtual assistant, so you'd think she would have clued me in on these things a little sooner. But what did
I did
she?
a whole class on it at Mount Herman this last year.
Yeah, I wasn't there. Well, I'm gonna have to check. You'll have to send me your notes so I know how to get that all downloaded then. Well,
I can definitely run you through that. It makes it much easier. So like we went to Universal last week, and sometimes when I'm waiting in line there or we've done Disneyland, I'll pull out my phone and I'll be writing parts. That's how I get my writing time in.
well, that's really clever because there's a lot of times I'm traveling around and I don't have my computer with me and I don't want to take it with me, but having it on your iPad and your phone, that's helpful. So that's awesome. Well, you've got so much going on. I can't even imagine all that you have happening. I'm so proud of you. You're doing such a great job. All these different avenues. And I think you're going to have a hard time figuring out just where you want to settle because you want to do too many things at one time. But that's
I
not a bad thing.
someone Yeah, someone told me this last week. They're like, you're gonna be one of those people who's like always learning and in school or something. And I'm like, I might be. I love learning new things. If you could pay me to go to school, I would do it because I love it.
Yeah.
Maybe not the assignments all so much, but I just love learning.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty awesome. That's cool. Well, it's been such a pleasure to talk to you today, Denise. And when you do get your little clue books going, let's get back on here and chat about them. Okay.
That would be fun. I would love that.
Okay. Well, it's good to see you face to face.
Good to see you too. I feel like it's been so long.
It's been way too long. Okay, girl. Love you.
I love you too.
Bye.
Bye.